Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the December 2011 meeting of the New York City Transit Authority and affiliates. Happy holidays to everyone. We are honored to have the Chair and CEO designate, Joe Lota, with us. Welcome. Joe is, of course, an old friend of mine and most of you here, a former board member. You can't think of any better qualifications to be the chair and the CEO than to be a board member. Welcome, Joe. Are there public speakers?
Yes, we have two public speakers. The first speaker is Orrin Getz.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, members of the board. My name is Orrin Getz. I'd just like to first compliment New York City Transit Authority for the new electronic arrival signs in the subways. They're a great help. I really appreciate it, especially the signs that was put up on the shuttle platforms here in Grand Central Terminal. There is, however, a problem. Today when I used the number 7 train to get here, both escalators were out from the number 7 line, which is a deep station, up to the main concourse. And I think it's very important for the Transit Authority to make sure that those escalators from that deep station do work properly. It is a handicap for people who with any sort of disabilities, even senior citizens. Also, we need help at the Flushing Main Street station because some of the buses, like the Q28 and the Q16, stop a block away, and the only way you get to those buses is through an alleyway. And better signage is needed at that station to make sure that people getting to those buses know exactly where they are. So I would appreciate it if the transit would look into that and see if we can get better signage at the Flushing Main Street station to make sure that the people know where to get those buses. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Getz. The next speaker is Murray Bowden.
Good morning. I know I'm going to be repeating myself for a couple of meetings here, but the vest is to symbolize change, that we're in a new environment. Governor Cuomo has reinstated the Tappan Zee Bridge quite correctly. Governor Christie has gotten rid of temporarily the Arc Tunnel quite correctly. And we're in an environment that's entirely different than it was a year ago. And my job is not to stand up here and tell you what's wrong anymore. My job is to say, you need to think about how we do things. The contracts what Chuck here said before about repeating the contracts that we had last year, it's pretty much the same thing that was said at the Thruway Board meeting last Monday. The chair questioned whether or not repeating the same contract over and over again made a lot of sense. I had a nice little chat with Virgil Conway, who I hadn't seen since he was chair here many, many years ago. He's just come back from being some health problems, and it's a whole new ballgame where I have not discussed things with people before and been opposed to things. It's my job now to ask for meetings and meet with people and discuss it, not in front of the board here, but in private, and to solve problems, not to make a lot of noise about what has to be. Jim Weinstein at the New Jersey Transit Board meeting on Tuesday listened to all the public comments, which were about anything, and had comments about them, so that the public speakers knew that New Jersey Transit was addressing their concerns. So that if the derailment up in the Canadian border was addressed, they knew about it, and there were other questions and people were directed. So basically I'm telling you all, or trying to make it known, that the world's changed, that the way business was done for the last many, many, many years is different. I personally have changed. I now promote and help rather than oppose and say things that are wrong. Anything that's wrong will be addressed in private. So welcome to the new world.
Thank you, Mr. Bowden. That was the last speaker.
Thank you, public speakers. Is there any change to the work plan? No. Some voice always answers that from someplace. I never know where it comes from. We now turn to our innovative, hardworking, dynamic, and almost always ebullient President, Tom Prendergast, for your report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Subway performance indicators, Carmen Bianco.
Good morning.
The subway performance results for the month of October and the 12-month average where appropriate are as follows. Regarding weight assessment, the 12-month rolling average for system-wide subway weight assessment was 78.2. In October, that was a 0.2% decrease from the 78.4 in October of 10. In January, we talked about this last month, we will be issuing a slightly different weight assessment report. It'll contain everything that's on the current report, but it'll actually add some data so that we can see not only the evenness among trains that perform at their schedule plus the 25%, but we'll also see an additional column for 25 to 50%, 50 to 100, and those trains that are out over 100% in terms of weight assessment. Again, it'll give better data and better information so we can really look at the pattern of what's going on in the system. Moving on to on-time performance, system-wide OTP was 85.1. That's a decrease of 1.6% from the 86.7 in October of 10. Regarding weekends, OTP was 83.4. That's down 2 percentage points from 85.4 in 10. In October, we had a couple of significant events, one of which was the unusual snowstorm that we had around Halloween. That created some problems operationally. Specifically, we had to shut the Dyer line down for approximately 20 hours because the trees were sagging so badly. One of the things that occurred during that storm was not only did it snow and it was heavy and it was wet, but the trees still had all their foliage, so it really created some problems for us. So once we realized that, it was just easier to shut down and make sure we took care of the line from a safety perspective. We also, during the month of October, had a derailment just north of Brooklyn Bridge, and we also saw more maintenance on the system as you compare it to October a year ago. Moving on to key performance indicators, system-wide service KPI was 82.4. That was down 0.7% from 83.1 in October of 10. The PES, system-wide PES KPI was 91.1, down 0.9% from 92 in October of 10. For Staten Island, service KPI is not reported, but their PES score was 84.4. That was down 4.8%, and this is one that I'm keyed into because I just want to be sure that we really understand what's going on in Staten Island, and so we're renewing our interest there in terms of looking at the appearance of our trains and cleanliness, station information, etc. Moving on to MDBF, it decreased during the month of October. It's at 169,616. That's a 3.8% decrease. The 12-month average, however, was 171,655 miles. That's up 1.3% from 169,483 in the preceding 12 months. And that concludes the operations report.
Thank you, Carmen. Anybody have any questions of Carmen?
I have one question.
All right.
Carmen, the weekend on-time terminal performance of the 2 train was particularly terrible when compared to all of the others. Can you think of a reason that might have been so?
What I have on that is signal construction activity, so it probably was the balance of the work up at 180th Street.
Chuck?
Wouldn't that have affected the 5 as well then? Or?
It could have, but I mean, that's what I'm showing. Let me just see if I have better information on that for you.
Okay.
Go ahead, Chuck. Carmen's
First,
looking.
I'd like to congratulate you on the improvements on the number 1 line. They are dramatic. They're helpful. I'd like to ask you a question about the number 5. It seems like across the board, those statistics have plummeted quite significantly, not just month by month, but year over year. Is there some explanation for that? Take a look at page 3.6.
I'm sorry, 3.6?
Yes, chart number 2.
Okay. And go ahead. I'm sorry, sir.
Why is number 5, the number 5 line statistic, and it shows up across the board, decreased so badly?
I think in October was a month where we experienced, again, much more construction, much more maintenance on the line than we had comparing it to a year ago. So I think that's one of the factors. Now, while that tends to impact the on-time performance more, what we try to do, and it may not be apparent here, but what we really work on is the evenness. And that would be the weight assessment. In other words, can we really make sure that the service is delivered in an even way, rather than worrying about trains getting to their destination on time?
But you see, my concern is this. You've done, in my view, a magnificent job in starting a trend to improve the number 1.
Yes.
On the number 5, we seemed across the board to have a decline in virtually every department on that number 5. Could you take a look at that?
Yeah, I mean, if you go back to October, we were actually just
This is
closing
year
out
over
the
year.
construction project up at East 180th Street. That had a lot of impact on what we see here.
Oh.
So, hopefully as we go on, you won't see that in the future, but that was part of the issue here.
Mr. Chairman, may I raise a second question, which is on the PES KPI station report, page 3.21. I simply note that, again, the Borough of the Bronx has the distinguished honor of having the worst maintained stations and service and the like, and I don't like it. And I don't think President Prendergast likes it either.
Don't worry, we're going to work on that. Thanks, Carmen. Some of the lawyers on the... Oh, Freddie?
Thank you. Carmen,
You're going to disagree with Chuck?
while we're at number 5, let me ask a question about number 4, the number 4 line.
On the weekends or...
Well, the 12-month rolling percent difference that Mr. Merdler was referring to. Number 4 isn't too far away from the number 5 line. What explains that?
From a weight assessment perspective, there are a few things. One is the addition of much more maintenance on the line than we've had the previous, when you compare it to the other 12 months. We had 3 or 4 incidents during the course of the month that were driving that statistic also. I mean, one was signals, one was a person struck by a train, and then we had the Brooklyn Bridge derailment. There were several significant issues that drove that statistic.
And you don't expect them to maintain in the coming year?
This is one of these situations where we're trying to do our best to manage our maintenance so that we have the least impact. So moving to the closures, as we will in January, will help us do maintenance without impacting train operations. So we're looking for ways that we can do that where it minimizes the impact to service. But some of those things are not really in our control. If there's a police activity or someone's struck by a train, we're really at virtue of the situation to work through that type of an incident.
And it is those unusual events that account for 2.5%.
It's a combination.
difference?
It's a combination. It's, as I mentioned, in that particular case, it was one, with a significant incident. We call them a 12-9, but there were also some signal problems, and we had a derailment, and it was a combination of incidents.
I'm sure that our excellent staff is well aware that we like to see the performance levels go up rather than down, and we know that you're working hard on that, and we want to encourage you to continue to do so. Some of the lawyers have reminded me that I forgot to approve the minutes of the November meeting. They are in your board materials. Does anybody have any additions or corrections? If not, I will entertain a motion to approve them. Thank you. All in favor? The minutes are adopted.
Mr. Chairman, can we go back to the Bronx stations? I don't want to forget them. They're in pretty bad shape. I know that President Prendergast has been making a significant effort to deal with at least 2 of them, but look at these numbers. They are pretty bad. Look at page 3.21.
In terms of 3.21, if you look at the box to the right that's information, My understanding, because I really wanted to understand what's driving that number. That is simply the lack of a map that has historically never been put in those stations, and we are looking at a way now that we could have, because of clearances around the control area, it's difficult to put the standard size in, but we are looking for ways to add that map, and we will do that. So that will drive that score, and it simply comes down to the map. In terms of appearance, we are going to add additional cleaning personnel in that area.
I look forward to the Schmutz parade.
Safety report, Cheryl Kennedy.
Okay, safety results were as follows. The subway customer accident rate increased by 1.3% compared to the previous 12-month period. In the month of September, the accident rate increased 21.3%, moving to 2.73 per million subway customers from a rate of 2.25 last year. The employee lost time accident rate increased 5.8% for the month of October 2011 versus October 2010. Additionally, the rolling 12-month rate increased by 9.2% over the previous 12-month period. There were 95 confirmed fires for the month of October, up 30.1% from the previous year. However, fires decreased over the last 12 months by 0.2%. In the month of October, there was one above-average category fire. 98.9% of all fires were categorized as being low or average in severity for the month of October.
Thank you, Cheryl. Who's next?
Read the crime report. As you know, today is a funeral for Officer Fagoski in Long Island, and the chief needed to attend that funeral along with the deputy chief.
Yeah, we're very grateful to both of them for representing us there, so please thank them on behalf of all of us.
They did ask me to read a report. Chief Fox asked me to read a report, and he made a commitment he will be here in January. There are a number of questions the past few months regarding crime statistics and the actions the New York City Transit Bureau is taking to respond to those, but let me read the statement. The members of the NYPD Transit Bureau continue to address the challenging proliferation of cell phone thefts, which have fueled this year's increase in crime. This year we have an increase of 345 crimes, which is a 17.7% difference increase as compared to last year. We're averaging 6.93 crimes per day compared to 8.5 crimes per day 5 years ago and 10.3 crimes per day 10 years ago. Nearly 50% of all this year's crime involved electronic devices. The very high resale value of these items make them attractive to thieves. Transit systems, not only here in New York but all over the country, have experienced this trend. The closing doors of a train and the ease of fleeing off the platform make our subways particularly vulnerable. Guiding the department's overall effort is the recently issued Electronic Device Crime Reduction Strategy developed by the Deputy Commissioner of Operations of the Transit Bureau. Their officers have been successful in implementing components of this plan, such as decoy operations, debriefing arrestees, reverse cell phone stings, parole stipulations, and focused enforcement. During the first week of December, a Bureau-wide initiative known as Toolbox was conducted. This all-out effort by every member of the Transit Bureau resulted in over 1,600 arrests, 5,879 enforcement contacts in 1 week alone. That included 381 persons wanted, 12 knife arrests, and 2 gun arrests. Our efforts were reinforced with a resulting 13% decrease in crime the following week. At the last committee meeting, it was announced that additional officers were being trained in decoy work. These assignments have quadrupled our decoy operations capabilities. The results were significant. Since that announcement, 8 persons with histories of prior thefts were netted in these successful operations. One most notably was arrested by Detective Nelson Dones on the last day of his 31-year career. Another person arrested was Raymond Rodriguez, who had 27 prior arrests, stole a cell phone from an undercover decoy officer on the number 4 train. The very high resale value of these devices has caused unscrupulous store operators to buy stolen devices from criminals, and one method the Transit Bureau is utilizing to address this issue is having detectives debrief those arrested for stealing the devices and gather intelligence on who is buying these stolen goods. Reverse sting operations are then conducted at these locations. There have been 44 arrests for buying stolen electronic devices during these operations. Hardened criminals often return to the subway over and over again to ply their trade. The parole stipulation program is another effort to keep those who gravitate to the subway for illegal activities from returning over and over again. Working with the Division of Parole, those released on parole, that has shown a propensity to commit crimes in the subway have had stipulations or conditions added to their release preventing them from subway use. There are currently 36 such individuals. Just last week, parolee Christopher Harris, arrested 48 times, including several cell phone snatches, had a stipulation placed on his parole banning him from the subway 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Another parolee who had stipulations banning him from the subway, Edward Rivera, was arrested on November 28th for fare evasion. He had a previous parole stipulation barring him from the subway and was returned to prison for violating that parole. The riding public's assistance and awareness is essential to curtailing these problems. Among our efforts to educate our riders on the vulnerability of sitting near the train doors with their devices out and open to induce several crime prevention initiatives have been implemented. The police department has designed and printed awareness cards specifically for subway riders with cell phones. Prevention messages are printed in several languages and complement the MTA's crime prevention efforts in the subway. Combining forces with the Community Affairs Bureau, Patrol Bureau, and the Auxiliary Transit Police, they have increased the level of awareness to the riding public. The Transit Bureau has also over 200 dedicated and concerned citizens who volunteer their time to patrol the subway and act as auxiliary police officers. An average of 1,700 flyers are given out per week and 204,000 since the program was implemented in October. We thank Subways and Carmen Bianco for their efforts in this regard. We are confident that these efforts will result in a clear reduction in crime. Over the last year, adding to the challenge of the electronic devices is a reduction of officers. While it's true that in transit we're down in headcount year-to-date by 9.7%, it's also true that the department has lost through attrition 15.4% of the force over the last decade. That's over 6,000 positions. Moreover, despite the currently tight budget, the mayor indicated in city's financial plan last month that a new police academy class of 900 officers will be hired early in January in addition to the class graduating in January. Those officers will be on the subway at the new year. Thank you for allowing the statement to be included in today's meeting. I look forward to discussing the progress of these initiatives and any other questions you may have when I come to the meeting next month.
Any questions of either Chief Fox or of his alter ego, Tom?
You know, these statistics are really, really troubling. I tell Carmen whenever I see people sneaking in, and I'm sure that the folks that are doing these crimes have not paid to get into the system. So we got to stop this at the turnstile. We used to say we stop crime at the turnstiles. We can no longer say that as people are coming in all over the place not paying. Secondly, what are we doing to work with the wireless providers? You know, the two GSM providers, AT&T and T-Mobile, those phones use SIM cards. It's a simple thing for the provider to lock out a new SIM card on those phones and make them totally worthless to somebody that wants to steal them and resell them. So I'm just wondering, are we working with the wireless providers to do something like this?
I'm going to have to defer to the chief when he comes next month to talk about all the deployment strategies and all the other initiatives that they have initiated.
Chuck?
Mr. Chairman, I congratulate Chief Fox, who is really intensely working on this area. I have a suggestion for our staff, and that is, can we start placing advertisements or signs inside the trains telling people to be careful and putting them on notice that they are themselves incurring a risk?
I believe we make announcements, but we can explore any and all means available to be able to reinforce the message from the police. We probably have announcements up too.
Yes. Do we have signs in the cars now? And and on the platforms? Can we do that? Thank you.
Finance. Preliminary October 2011 fare box revenue was $316.6 million, $1.8 million above forecast. Year-to-date fare box revenue was $16.6 million below forecast, mostly due to the effects of Hurricane Irene in August. The average non-student fare in October 2011 was $1.64, and in constant 1996 dollars, the average October fare fell from $1.38 in 1996 to $1.11 in 2011.
Say that again. I like that.
In constant 1996 dollars, the October average fare fell from $1.38 in 1996 to $1.11 in 2011. Preliminary October 2011 operating expenses before depreciation and Other than personnel expenses, exceeded budget by $2.9 million, due mostly to higher power prices, overtime requirements, and the unfavorable timing of fringe benefit expenses. These unfavorable results were partially offset by the lower paratransit completed trips and material expense underruns. Year-to-date operating expenses were $37.5 million below forecast, due primarily to paratransit underruns, payroll underruns, and the favorable timing of several non-labor expenses, partly offset by higher overtime requirements and power prices. Moving on to ridership, October 2011 ridership totaled 204.2 million, 0.2% above forecast. Year-to-date ridership was 1.92 billion, or 1% below forecast. October 2011 average weekday ridership was 5.5 million, an increase of 1.8% from October of 2010. This was the highest average weekday subway ridership of any month in over 40 years. October 2011 average weekday local bus ridership was 2.2 million, a decrease of 4.2% from October 2010, and average weekday express bus ridership was 43,000, an increase of 0.3% from October 2010. October 2011 average weekday paratransit ridership was 30,000, a decrease of 3.6% from October 2010. Preliminary November 2011 financial results show that total fare box revenue was $1.4 million, or 0.5% above forecast. And due to the accelerated scheduling of board meetings this month, we don't have the preliminary expense results for November as of yet.
Any questions of the President on ridership or finance?
Well done. Tom, if you will turn to page 4.20, we have there subway track, subway power, subway signal, and subway electronic maintenance figures showing fairly significant variances. And I want to see if we can do the following. Is it possible to identify on a borough-by-borough basis where those problems are occurring?
Well, these numbers reflect
These are the
budget
maintenance
expenses.
numbers.
Yeah, but these numbers reflect budget by the organizational function, and they're deployed across boroughs, so it may be difficult to be able to summarize exactly where the money was spent. The performance numbers state to how the performance was. But even on a given line, as we've said before, almost all lines traverse through at least 2, if not 3 boroughs. So the delays in one area generally affect the delays in other areas as well.
Don't disagree with that, although I do add that I do have a preoccupation with the borough of the Bronx.
Didn't notice.
That's because Borough President Ferrer insisted I do so. But having said that, the numbers shown in terms of reductions in maintenance, it looks like reductions in maintenance on subway tracks, power, and signals. Does that contribute to delay? Because if you look at page 4.23, the overtime is up there. Have we just reduced personnel in that area?
Well, you'll see, I know you attend the Finance Committee meeting, and the budget for 2012 going forward includes the addition of new resources that I don't want to get into detail. I want to have that covered at the Finance Committee to address problems we have primarily in signals, where we were falling behind, and we did have the problems with the falsification of reports. Where we have a problem with resources, where we don't have enough resources to do work, we've made the decision to add those resources. And in some cases, where we haven't had those problems, we have cut back on resources. But historically, since I've been here for 2 years, most of those cuts have been more in the cleaning area, and the reason for that is under or service-driven, where we made service cuts to either subways or bus routes. But in the cleaning area, the reason we make the decision there is you're not cutting into the bone for critical inspection and maintenance activities, and then when the money comes back, you can reapply those resources and restore cleaning standards up to the levels, because you can never do enough cleaning in the subway.
Ready for capital program?
Fred?
Okay, good morning. Looking at capital program results, commitments during October totaled $20 million, including rehabilitation of yard track on the Concourse Rail Yard in the Bronx and 207th Street Rail Yard in Manhattan. Reconstruction of segments of mainline track on the Clark Street line. Clark Street runs between Chambers in Manhattan and Nevins in Brooklyn. And the third project, replacement of train stop cables at various locations throughout the system. Meanwhile, other completions totaled $11.3 million, including the replacement of ADA warning strips and rubbing boards at the platform edges at 34th Street on both the 6th Avenue and Broadway lines in Manhattan, and an MTA Small Business Mentoring Program project to repair staircases at the Juna Street station on the New Lots Avenue number 3 line in Brooklyn.
Any questions on the capital program? Are we ready for procurements?
Steve Lachaki, please. Good morning. The procurement package this month, which presents both New York City Transit and MTACC procurements, includes 10 actions totaling $706.9 million in expenditures. The first of the highlighted procurement actions on page 6.16 of the book is the award of a modified option under competitively solicited $87 million contract awarded in May 2010 to Kawasaki Railcar Incorporated of Yonkers, New York. The purpose is to purchase an additional 103 new communication-based train control CBTC-ready subway cars and have Kawasaki convert 370 existing R142A subway cars to be CBTC ready. The value of this option award is $387,995,000. This option, along with the base contract of 33 cars and redistribution of existing A Division cars, will ultimately comprise 46 CBTC-ready 11-car trains, 8 new trains and 38 converted trains for service on the Flushing line, plus 2 trains for projected ridership growth in other areas of the A Division. Final assembly of the new cars and the conversion of the 370 of our R142A cars will be performed at Kawasaki's Yonkers facility, and this will yield 26% New York State content for this option. The second highlighted procurement on page 6.17 of the book is a contract for the installation of track, signal, and traction power for Phase 1 of the 2nd Avenue subway and is recommended for award to Comstock Skanska, a joint venture in the amount of $261,900,000. The Board approved our use of the request for proposal process for this procurement, which generated excellent competition, resulting in receipt of proposals from 5 teams. Negotiations resulted in a price that was more than $14 million below our estimate, as we continue to see benefits of a very competitive construction market. The FTA will provide 80% of the funding for this contract. I'd also like to note that subsequent to the printing of the committee agenda, a proposer who was not selected submitted a protest. It is being reviewed in accordance with our internal procedures and FTA guidelines, and we will not make an award until this is resolved. In parallel with this award, the committee is also asked to approve the last of the highlighted procurements on page 6.12 of the book, an award to Thatcher Associates in the amount of $936,725 to assess MWDBE compliance of various Skanska contracts with MTACC. The need for this service arose from an investigation that uncovered serious flaws in Skanska's MWDBE compliance program. While a December 2011 report concluded that Skanska's overhauled compliance program meets best practices and industry standards, MTACC and the MTA's Office of the Inspector General believe that it is prudent to retain Thatcher to verify Skanska's implementation of its overall MWDBE compliance program. The service will be funded using a portion of the funds recovered from Skanska through its settlement with the U.S. Attorney's Office.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman. I'd like to focus on Kawasaki and to retread territory I discussed with the President, just so we're clear about this. Kawasaki has had an unusual record of accomplishment by being one of the very few people that gets contracts for cars for the last couple of decades. And my concerns here are the following. With respect to the Kawasaki contract, it seems to me that what we have here is a question as to whether or not we are broadening the field sufficiently to allow other companies to come in. Now, I noticed that, for example, on the snow throwers, you sent mailings of RFPs to anyone and everyone you could think of. Are we doing the same thing on cars? Because The American Transportation Association has a list of people that do that.
Chuck, as I recall, in May of 2010, we approved, after a pretty competitive tender, the contract for Kawasaki to provide these cars for the Flushing line, and this is just an option to fill out the rest of it. And the mix between new cars and converted cars, the converted cars went up, but every time we exercise an option, even if we convert more than we purchase, we have to approve the funding here. So that's why this is on here. So this is not a new one. This is an option from more than a year and a half ago. Is that right?
To have,
That's
Do
correct.
I have that right?
Yes.
I
you
have
do.
something right?
You have it
Okay.
right.
what I'm trying to have stated for the record is the following. The original purchase was of a lesser number of cars, and now we exercise an option for a larger number of cars. It is my understanding that that practice is fairly common for budgetary reasons in this area. Am I correct?
Generally, historically, go back far enough, the base was always larger than any option we ever awarded. We broke that model with the M7s on the commuter rail side. I know I was president at the railroad at the time, because we only had funding for 225 cars in the current program, and we couldn't procure and award a contract with funding we didn't have. But we locked in an option price, a very attractive option price, that enabled us to be able to get far more cars, over 1,000 cars between the two railroads. We followed that example here in the sense of having a base contract, getting a locked-in price on an option with a supplier who's a well-known supplier with us. And so that was the pattern that was followed. But historically speaking, you generally have a base that's larger than the option. We have broken that model here to our advantage over the years.
Are you going to, in connection with any additional acquisitions, communicate with all of the car manufacturers, both domestically and otherwise, subjecting them, of course, to Buy America and provide jobs in New York State?
Yes. If you go back far enough also, because sometimes it's good to explain why we got to where we're at. Early in the capital program, a decision was made at the MTA that rolling stock we're going to buy with local funds. And then a decision was made that we would try to have a requirement in the contract or a criterion for New York State content. That enabled us to bring jobs to New York State. And so in the history of the program, there have been 3 builders that have met that. Alstom is one, Kawasaki is another, Bombardier is the third. The 3 suppliers that we have historically in the last few contracts awarded to have been Bombardier, Kawasaki individually, or Kawasaki with Alstom in Alsca. We have entertained discussions and let others know if they want to come and do business in New York. When we use federal funds, we cannot specify New York State content, and lately we've been looking at using federal funds, so it would be a different playing field. The MTA, actually writing a contract for Long Island Railroad, has Oliver Wyman in, taking a look at procurement for rolling stock, looking forward, because there's some $3.5 billion in the next couple programs. And we're looking at ways, if you only save 5%, that's a big number. And one of the things we're looking at is how can we maximize the competition. There is a point past which, though, I will tell you, because I've worked in the private sector, if there's 5 or 6 bidders, some people make a decision not to even respond, because the likelihood of them winning is low. We can always do better. And so we are going to look, probably the next big procurement, not the 179. We're going to bring the 179 forward in the next few months to the committee and to the board. But the R211, which is probably out 5-6 years, is one we want to aggressively see if there's new players in the market. Once again, taking advantage of the leverage of New York State content.
May I move over to the Hewlett-Packard, or are you not there yet?
Absolutely.
We are there. What is the significant adverse information with respect to Hewlett-Packard, and has the issue been resolved?
Yes, the issue has been resolved. Chairman signed it this morning. The information had to do with Foreign Corruption Practice Acts. It dealt with a former German subsidiary of HP and their dealings with the Russian Federation.
Okay. Can I follow up with one last question, please?
Exciting stuff.
I'm not going to go anywhere near there. I have one last question. I have a problem which has been articulated many times concerning proprietary software, and which we have discussed. And my concern and question is the following. Is that because all too often the presence of proprietary software becomes the basis for sole sourcing in various procurements. And my question is, to what extent, if any, do you now have, and I know you do have, measures to get licensing of that software, and to what extent can we expand that?
You start and then I'll finish.
All of our car contracts require that the car manufacturers provide the software and escrow. For quite some time, all of the car manufacturers have precluded its use in order to develop competition on the sub-level. We're able to use it under certain circumstances, one of which is if we can't maintain the car. Another is if that sub goes out of business. The other is if we get an unreasonable price, we're able also to execute that escrow agreement. Those are in all of our car contracts.
Do you have a definition of unreasonable price?
Well, we have to go through. We typically go through it in terms of looking at producer price index, what the market is dictating for like items. We do sort of parametric pricing for like items.
Okay. My concern, of course, is if we stimulate more competition, there's a better chance for us to get business for New York, jobs for New York, and that is the purpose of my question, because the software stuff keeps coming up over and over again.
We've been having conversations with all of the major car builders, and they understand the importance of developing competition at a sub-level. So for the R211, we're going to go out aggressively and pursue that as an initiative. I will tell you that that doesn't occur anywhere else in the country, and we've already spoken to all of our manufacturers and told them that of our desire to do that. And we're going to also speak to the major sub-suppliers in that regard. The notion being is if they only have one supplier, we'd like them to have multiple sub-suppliers so that in the aftermarket we can go out and compete that and we won't have to go back. Part of the challenge, though, and I think you've heard it before, is there was a recent GAO report that indicates that we represent, the U.S. market represents about 5% of the worldwide business in this particular area. It's very difficult to encourage contractors, builders to come over when there's such limited contract awards here. They have to set up facilities here. They need to compete with a lot of the incumbents, and we've heard that over time. The market doesn't sustain their investment, and with the limited resources in the economy, it's been a challenge.
To my knowledge, Dailin in China and the Polish government are both interested in doing that, and I think what I would try and tack onto this is to congratulate Transit, because what it did, as indicated on page 6.14, is to place advertisements in publications across the world to try and encourage bidding, which is a departure from what any of the other agencies have done. And I congratulate them, but I think you ought to take a good hard look at some of these foreign entities that can do it and are prepared to do it.
If you know of folks, my door is open.
I just mentioned two.
I'll follow up with you.
Oh, go ahead, Jeff.
Sorry, just a quick question. How does the Buy New York provision, as it works with the subway cars, is a point score, right? They get an extra bonus if it's Buy New York?
Well, when federally funded contracts, you know we don't use that.
Right.
It's precluded. But what we do is we allow like a 10% benefit.
Right.
And the calculation uses the unit price of the car, fully loaded, and we allow for the party with the highest New York content to get a 10% credit off the lowest unit price of the car,
And so has that
which is substantial.
So has that ever driven a decision? Has one company got it over the other because of that 10% spread?
No. No. I mean, it's helped them considerably, but typically it has a lot to do with the actual individual pricing and all.
So
Those three players have made a commitment to be in New York with plants and do quite a bit of the assembly in New York.
Right, I guess the roundabout answer to my question is we're not leaving any money on the table by not going to them, except for that 10% credit.
No, I mean, we maximize it in accordance with the law.
We wouldn't go to a different vendor if we didn't give them the credit. Is that an accurate statement?
The way the law reads is that you're allowed to give them about a 10% maximum benefit, but the New York State content cannot be the sole deciding factor in that award.
But
so it provides certain limitations, advantages, certain limitations as well.
One of the points Steve and I failed to mention is probably one of the strongest. not that we can't do better, I don't want to leave you with that impression, is the price we get on our rolling stock, especially our rail cars, is probably the most competitive in North America in terms of the actual unit cost per car. 50-foot, 75-foot, or 60-foot.
Regardless of the state.
Absolutely. Now, part of that's volume, but part of that also is we know our numbers. But we can always do better.
So if that's the case, going to federal funds, which might be the case in the next couple of years with the capital plan that we're likely to approve, it won't make a difference from a price perspective of the railways. We won't save any money in that way because we're getting the best price anyway. Is that? I think
Probably not. It depends on whether or not someone wants to enter the market and aggressively enter the market in a way that's price competitive.
But they could have entered it anyway if we give a New York State preference, right? I think that's what you were saying.
Yes, but historically they haven't. I mean, and we get very good pricing with 3, but we'll try to get 4 and 5 bidders.
Is there any problem on a perception level that they believe that because Kawasaki keeps getting these contracts that it's got a lock on the business, so to speak?
Well, I can address that. The last very large order that we had didn't go solely to Kawasaki. It went to Alscor, which is a combination of Alstom and Kawasaki. And the majority of the cars, like 60+% of the cars, actually went to Alstom and were built by Alstom. And at that point, Alstom was a new entry into the market with us in terms of being a car builder.
And not only are the prices we getting competitive, the mean distance between failure, the reliabilities are leading the pack in terms of North America. You can't remain in the position just satisfied with 3, though. So we'll constantly go out and see if there's other people who want to play and want to do business in New York.
I congratulate you and I thank you.
All right. If there's no further discussion, the procurements have been moved. Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Fred. Procurements are moved to the board.
We have a number of action items for approval in Section 7, and Fred Smith will request an amendment to the New York City Transit 2010 through 14 capital program, and the MTACC action items will be covered by Michael Herendachano later. Fred?
New York City Transit requests board approval to add a project to the 2010 to 2014 capital program. The project, valued at $95 million, will address electrical and structural work in the Steinway 2, serving the number 7 line under the East River. This work will make use of major service diversions already planned for in the two for 2012 and 2013. The diversions are part of the signal modernization of the line, which is underway. Funds for this work are available through program savings as a result of good bid experience, which is continuing, and the reprioritization of similar infrastructure work on the 4th Avenue line, which is in the capital program. Board approval is recommended.
All right. The lawyers have once again told me that I need a motion before we have discussion. Is there a motion to approve this capital amendment?
Move.
Thank you. Any discussion?
Quick question, if I may. Is this going to be the process with an RFP, or are you going to do bidding, or what are you going to do?
I believe these are bid. Fred?
Yes, competitively bid.
Thank you.
Jeff?
So I'm a bit confused as to the funding from this capital plan. This is for the current capital plan that's already been approved.
We're working within the current capital program, yes.
So how much, you're saying that there's savings in the current capital program of $55 million. Is that from within this project? Is it from other parts of the project?
It's from various projects that we have put on the street and received very competitive bid prices below our budgeted amount, therefore creating a savings on individual projects.
How much room is left in the current capital plan due to savings elsewhere? This is a much larger question than just this.
Well, it's changing every time we award a contract, but it was in excess of $90 million, so we have room to work here.
Yeah, I believe this will be covered at CPOC today, later this afternoon.
Thanks.
All right. A motion has been made to approve this capital program amendment. All in favor? Any opposed? All right. That is moved also. Next, we have
service change.
Service changes.
These are not for board approval. These are for information to the board. Moving on to Section 8 of the agenda, we are presenting 2 service changes for your information. Our first action is to make permanent the route revisions to the S55 and S74 in response to the recent closing of the Arthur Kill Correctional Facility in Staten Island. On December 5th, in response to the facility closing, the route of the S55 was modified to terminate at Bloomingdale Road and Veterans Road, and we plan to make this change permanent. In addition, we will simultaneously reroute the S-74 to bypass the interior stop at the now closed facility, as there will no longer be riders at this location and the area will be restricted. This change is cost neutral. With our second action, we plan to reroute 4 a.m. and 4 p.m. X-22 express bus trips that serve Tottenville and would operate express along the West Shore Expressway in Staten Island between Outer Bridge Park and Ride to Checkpoint, which is located at Arthur Kill Road and Huguenot Avenue, and then proceed over its regular route into Manhattan. These trips are labeled the X-22A and are offered to help minimize the impact to the X-22 riders as we attempt to provide service to Outer Bridge Park and Ride facility, which was a facility built by the state for Atlantic Express, and they ceased operations on one of their routes. There is no additional cost associated with this change either.
Any comments on the service changes? Okay, thank you, Tom. And you have a special presentation
The
for
special
us.
presentation is just the MetroCard presentation, which we leave, which we put in the book if there's any questions. If not, then we'll turn over to Michael Radnachanu.
All right, Michael. The floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm going to just go briefly over the three of the projects, starting with the Fulton Street Transit. We have completed successfully the mini pilot operations under the AC Station West Mezzanine. That was a high-risk operation, and we were able to do that. The structural steel for the Transit Center building has been completed, and the dome has been cladded. So that actually is advanced, and part of it we took down the tower crane just about prior to the Thanksgiving. So we are actually moving forward to eventually provide the glass cladding. This is the facade.
Oh, okay. Non-structural element.
Right. We hang it on it.
Right.
This is the Day Street entry point, and this is the canopy has been installed. And what we're looking here is actually our underpass, the part that has not been open, and the finishes are there for that. So that is proceeding on time in terms of when we'll turn it over for usage to the public. Number 7 line. The running tunnels and station structure work is actually going to be substantially complete in April of 2012, about 5 months ahead of the schedule. The Site L at the 41st Street and Dyer Avenue, there are 2 added-to connections that were turned over to the system finisher. This is actually, you can hold on and we'll put it at the end. This is actually something that we're able to do in order to turn it over to the systems and finishers contractor. Now you can show that. This is actually the looking at the interlock, looking south. This is the platform construction, and basically is getting ready for the finishes. This is the north interlocking, looking basically north next. And this is the south end mezzanine. So you can see that the work actually is just waiting for that to be to go forward.
Anything that you complete 5 months ahead of schedule, this is not good for your reputation. You know?
Well, but I'm trying desperately to stay with the final date. That this is not necessarily as easy. So that allows me to have some time to get done. The Site J, this is the main station entrance, and ventilation building is continuing. And what you see here, go back for a moment. This is actually taken in September. You can see the buildings are still there. And then current picture, the building is gone. We started to build the structure, so that continues. 11th Avenue is to the right, and you can see that we've demolished. Can it go on? No? I'm sorry. We demolished actually 11th Avenue, a big piece of it. We started to build under that, and 11th Avenue actually is going to be moving from a structure to, in effect, a on-grade structure. So that will actually decrease the amount of maintenance that the DOT will have to have in the future. They funded that work as part of our work. The I would like to mention that Site P, that this is not actually on the critical path here. We expect to have a bid opening in March and give a notice to proceed in June 2012. This is, in effect, disconnected for the moment from the operational part of the of number 7. That will come online later on, and that is proceeding on time right now. Second Avenue. Second Avenue is, I'm going to just go over some of the work that we're doing and some of the challenges that we are having right now. Can you go to the first one? The tunnel arches and the concreting of the tunnel. This is the West Tunnel. We started that in November, and early November, and today we have 55% complete, and this work is moving. In addition to that, and this is part of the first contract, and in addition to that, the drill and blast excavation at the pump room at 78th Street also progresses well, about 60% complete. The 96th Street station, this is the site work and heavy civil. Do we have a picture of that? No? Okay. The west side of Slurry Walls has been completed. We're now starting on the east side, and we are about 2 weeks behind there, and we are trying to kind of make up the time. Actually, on the 86th Street station, the utility work has been done. The contract was turned over to the new contractor, and this is Skanska with Trailer Brothers for the civil work. And that's a contract that we awarded somewhat late, about 4 or 5 months late, due to technical difficulties that we have had with in order to get them approved. We started the pre-construction work there, and they're going to be underway. Again, a lot of the lessons that we're still learning on 72nd Street will be applied to that, because, again, we're blasting in the middle of the densest area that has ever been, so we are trying to be very accommodating. At the 72nd Street station, we have encountered a lot of difficulties with the local residents, and we are on the way, hopefully, to solve that. At this point, we have had a workshop in November. This was open to everyone, and it worked as a charrette. We had moderators at every table. People were asked to identify their problems. They were also asked to come up with solutions if they have any. And it was actually well received. People were quite happy about that. In addition to that, we created a construction advisory meetings every month around every station. We have an hour and a half with a contractor, with the construction managers, with the representative of a local stakeholders in the area, and we're doing that in order to give them heads up as to what's going to be happening in the future. One of the things that actually we have done as part of this town hall workshop is to ask residents that want to come and see the work underground to sign up. We're doing once a month a tour, and we did one this Saturday, and I have to say that the people came in as skeptics, and they walked out actually very happy with what they've seen, and that was actually even the people that were our biggest detractors were there. So it was kind of nice to see that. Hope that they will also put it in writing, not just verbally.
Did you ever think that public relations was a vital part of being a civil engineer?
To a certain degree, the answer is yes. I had my own firm for about over 20 years, and I had to not be only a good engineer, but also to know how to walk other things. I just wanted to show something. This is the art proposed for the 96th Street station, and I think is incredibly beautiful, and this is how the station will look when it's done. So quite frankly, I felt that would be nice for us to share it with you. That's about it.
Questions for Michael?
Yeah, I have a couple of action items. We have two action items totaling about $480,000, and Dave Cannon will go through them. Dave?
Yes, we have two action items starting on page 7.3. Both are related to the 2nd Avenue subway project. The first item requests approval to enter into an agreement with Digby Management Company in a not-to-exceed amount of $250,000. This agreement is for oversight and coordination of utility relocation and other construction activities on their property, which is required in order to facilitate the construction of a new entrance for the 63rd Street and Lexington Avenue subway station. The second item requests approval to modify an existing agreement with a private building owner related to additional design costs on their due to construction on their property required to build an ancillary facility for the 86th Street station at 2nd Avenue. The additional cost is in the amount of $230,768,000.
I'd like to recuse myself from the utility interference item.
Good point. You are recused. Thank you. Any other questions? Is there a motion to approve these items? Second? All in favor? They are approved. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
I just have one more. I forgot to mention during our operations report, I forgot to mention a little bit of good news today. One of the public speakers complained about an escalator out of service and how it impacted him in his daily trip to work. We now have an application where you can get web alerts on status of elevators and escalators. You go to the web page and find out. That's been up there for a while, but I believe starting today you can actually sign up for a web alert notice, so it'll be sent to you. And we're going to have some information going out on that today over the wire. So, thank you.
All right, before we go to bus, any more on transit? Is there a motion to adjourn? You have something, Chef? Go ahead.
Page 7.8.
7.8.
Reinstatement of the work experience. Page 7.8, the reinstatement of the work experience program. Is this workfare?
The work experience program, yes, and what we've reinstated is the ability to take people from New York City, human resources, and utilize them in the subway on a rolling week-in, week-out basis. It's over 570 some heads. It may grow, and it enables us to supplement our cleaning services in a variety of locations throughout the city.
Have you had any feedback from the unions on this?
No.
Okay, good. Thank you.
All right, a motion to adjourn and go into bus. All in favor? Thanks very much. We will come back to bus in just a second.